Now we're recording. Hi everybody. My name is Rob Patterson, and I'm talking with Cynthia Dennis. And Cynthia, why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about who you are and where you are?
So, my name is Cynthia Dennis. I've been friends with Rob for, oh my goodness, 10 years almost now, if you can believe it. I'm living in Prince Edward Island after being here, there, and everywhere. And I'm a new mom and kind of thinking with my partner about next steps in building our family and what's our place in all of this. So that's sort of a quick snapshot of where I'm at and what's going on with me.
How old is Sadie now?
Zadie will be 14 months next week.
Right.
So she's just a little wee babe.
Right. And we're having this conversation because both of us feel that there's something so wrong, that something awful is going to happen. And whilst we don't know when it's going to be, we're pretty certain it's going to be in Zadie's life. And I'm 64, and I have grandchildren just a little bit older than Zadie, although I've got one coming along now that is going to be younger. And I'm certain that whatever happens that's not going to be very nice is going to happen to my grandchildren and to Sadie. So, Cynthia, tell us a little bit about your hopes and fears for Sadie.
I think it's over the last couple of months. I guess it kind of started in the winter. Almost every evening around bedtime, I would start to feel this anxiety about death and thinking not just about my death, but just about humanity and kind of being overwhelmed by this feeling that something bad was coming, and what was I going to do about it, and where should I place myself physically, geographically, to sort of best combat something that's coming, and in line with that, also thinking about, it's people start asking then after your child turns a year old, oh, when are you thinking about the next one? And I'm sitting there going I'm not. I can't. I would love to have more babies. I would love to have a nice big family, but just thinking back to the last few months and this sort of nightly ritual that I've really had to battle with these feelings, I'm going, I can't imagine bringing another child into this, and kind of oscillating back and forth between thinking, oh, well, just think on the bright side and it's going to be, trying to keep these fears at bay and telling myself that it's this irrational negative line of thinking, but then also just going nah, I'm pretty sure that there's a major shift on the horizon, and it's just, as I said to you when I was let's talk about this, it's I just get the sense that we're just rearranging the deck chairs, and there's not, there's talk about, the system collapsing, but I don't really know if we have a sense of exactly how bad that could potentially be and how quickly it could come, and these are the kinds of things that I think about when I look at my daughter, and I go, man, oh man, you're like I said, I really got to make you a strong woman, because you're going to have to deal with stuff that I'll only have to start thinking about,
Right. So I'm going to say a little bit from my point of view. First of all, when I was your age, and you're what, 31?
33.
30, oh, okay, 33. Okay. When I was 33, I still had total confidence that the world that I lived in was going to be fine. But I think nearly everybody today feels, as Cynthia does, there's something wrong, and it isn't about just sort of the corporate world and government doesn't listen. There's some big structural things like the weather and, what's in our water and what's in our food and really massive things. And I think many people, I certainly do, share Cynthia's sense of dread. And we can't really name it. But I think people's intuition is very good. And there's a sense of there's a storm coming, and this is not just another depression or a cyclical something major is going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. The word dread. It's dreadful. It's a dreadful feeling. And unfortunately for me, I've always been an incredibly intuitive person, and I'm not very often wrong about these things. And that's what bothers me so much is that, I've struggled with that. And as I get older, I'm learning to not struggle with it so much and to just trust that voice that I've got inside me that's very, very, very strong and will often give me a sense of what's coming. And it's like, there's something coming. There's something coming quickly, and what I find frustrating about it is going about the context of my daily life, especially here in Prince Edward Island, where nobody wants to talk about anything. Nobody wants to upset the boat, and people just want to carry on their merry way. And I'm sitting there trying to deal with these dreadful feelings about the conversation being on the wrong things entirely. Like, it's like, I get really, really frustrated, like just sitting at family dinners or sitting with friends. And it's like, I just want to be like, can we talk about something real, the real stuff that's happening? I brought up at a family gathering recently, like, what are you going to do on your land in however many years when the sea level rises, whatever. And it was like, oh, well, like my properties at such and such a line will be fine. So-and-so down the road, they'll...
Charlottetown will be underwater, but my property will be fine. And if my property is fine, but Charlottetown's underwater, I'll be fine, won't I?
Yeah, and not even connecting the dots that, like, that means, like, total system collapse.
Well, it also means that not only Charlottetown's underwater, but so is New York, Washington, Baltimore, Montreal, Paris, London, because every major city is at sea level.
Yeah.
It's just one of the things. So, I feel it's the anniversary of the outbreak of the First World War this week. In fact, on Monday of this week, which was August the 2nd, for those of you listening, was when Britain declared war. And on Tuesday was when Canada declared war. And everybody thought this was the most exciting thing that had ever happened to them. And 4 years later, the world was a completely different place. And not a better place. And this social disaster changed everything, as if overnight. And I think if you read Chekhov plays written, around about 1900, they're all people sitting in the country having the conversations that Cynthia's talking about with their family. They're talking about absolutely inconsequential things. Yeah. And not only did Russia suffer terribly in the First World War, but then they had the revolution, and then they had the Russian Civil War. And these people who are talking about the weather and what's the play in Moscow and are you going to St. Petersburg this summer, it's all gone. It's all completely gone. Or if you're in Rome at 400, you might be talking about, is my, who's going to be consul and, the emperor and all that kind of shit. And 410 it's all gone. It's all gone.
Exactly.
And I think it's the sense of, do you think, Cynthia, it's a sense of that it isn't like there's going to be a change of government or, whatever. It's going to be like there's going to be completely, utterly not now.
It will be so... I don't even think we can imagine.
No, I don't.
I don't even think we can imagine. And the changes that will be coming, and the thing that the other component to it is feeling so disconnected to the earth. I feel so disconnected to the earth. Like I on the one hand, I feel very deeply connected, but I don't know enough. I don't know enough about food and how to grow food, or I don't know enough about how to make a shelter. I don't know enough about all of these things that I think like could be very real necessary skills.
So we're incredibly unskilled, aren't we? I mean, I've just started myself. Robin, my wife, has been pretty good in the garden, but this year, for the first time, age 64, I've actually planted and I've harvested all my potatoes, by the way, Cynthia.
Wow, that's great.
But it's not easy, and I think we think of ourselves and we all go to school and we learn all these so-called skills, but that we don't know how to do anything important.
No.
Do we?
No. And even just like the cycles of the earth, like the moon and the tides and all that kind of thing. Like I have a sense of it, but like, it's that feeling really not prepared and feeling like I've got so much work to do, and then feeling like, well, when do I find the time in my life right now to do that? Unless I just completely
drop
out.
Yep.
That's exactly it. That's exactly the struggle, and that's where I get stuck. Is having this feeling like I can't keep doing this. I can't keep, and I've had this battle, and God, I've come to you so many times, like, Rob, I can't keep playing this game, and it's like here I am saying the same thing because it's incredibly hard.
Yeah.
When you want to maintain friendships and you want to maintain connections with your family, when you're kind of an island standing there going like, wow.
Well, I wonder to just deal with another, because I think some of our listeners are going to, they'll be keen on protesting and occupy this and whatever.
But that doesn't work.
Let's just talk about that for a moment, because most people's first reaction isn't to learn how to grow potatoes. It is to carry a banner and get arrested in Manhattan. We'll talk a little bit about that, Cynthia. Yeah, is that one of the choices you've been considering, and if not, why?
No, I really think the conversation needs to completely change. I think that like this whole like us versus them and the whole like protesting and like, look, I mean, I could argue ideologies and whatever like till the cows come home. It doesn't make a hill of beans a difference. It really doesn't. Like, it doesn't matter how many sing-alongs you have or how many people you get out to a protest. Like, it's the same structure that doesn't work, and we just keep doing it. I don't know, like, if we just think if we get enough people to go in a march that somehow like something's going to change.
No.
Like, it won't. And that's the thing. I don't know what the answer is other than to be the change. But it's still, how do you do it? How do you do it and still maintain and still not be ostracized as the completely crazy person who's gone off the deep end because they don't want to participate anymore?
I have an idea, though, which is that if we all remember that we're all very different and we don't all change very easily, but a few crazy people do. And all great change starts with just a few people. And I think that the sad part of it is that many of our close friends, and even more sad, our family, aren't those people. And Charles Dickens, the great theme of his book is actually that family doesn't work very well. It didn't work for him,
Yeah.
And in his books, what happens, you often have orphans, all right, or abandoned children who find their new family.
Yeah.
We're not related, but I feel like you're one of my children, and we find our real family, which is not blood, and it starts with one or two people, and I think that's one of the ways that we have to relax a bit about our close friends of our old life
Yeah.
and our family, our blood family.
It's
And
very true, and that's been an ongoing theme in my discussions with my partner, sort of in these nightly sessions of dealing with my dread and the what to do of it all is that sort of the universal family, as you say, and kind of having to sacrifice, or kind of saying like, well, we need to find our tribe. We need to find
Yes.
people that are speaking the same language. And that's exactly, that's it. That's why I value our relationship so much, is because what I found so refreshing about it is that at the dinner table, we're talking about real things, It's like,
and there's not all that, our own, every family, our own parents, there's all the stuff, isn't there?
yes,
And that's true in every family.
exactly. Yeah.
I'm seeing my uncle on Saturday, who's outlived my own father by 30 something years, and he's just been a lifesaver for me. I could never have had the relationship with my own father that I do with my uncle,
Yeah.
because there isn't the stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think you're onto another thing here, which is we have to find our own tribes, and we're lucky if there's some blood involved.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, like, what does it even matter anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's part of, I think, it goes back to the protesting doesn't work. It's like there needs to be such a commitment to being our more conscious selves and just loving everybody no matter what. And, there needs to be a sort of like turning on of universal spirit and loving people and all that. Like, I don't see any other way. I don't see any other way that we can manage to do this if we don't just drop the garbage,
Yeah. So many of our American friends who are worried about this kind of thing, their first thing is, get a place in the middle of nowhere, buy 100 guns, and buy 3 years' supply of freeze-dried food, and shoot everybody who comes near you. You see, I think you and I are talking about something very different. I think what we're saying is, without a tribe, we're doomed.
And this is it. Like, I don't want to talk about the Middle East, but to just say, like, how simple would it be if they just stopped hating each other for no good reason? Like, the answers are simple. And that's the thing, is that, like, the answers to all of this stuff is so friggin' simple. It's like, you just gotta drop the garbage and just, like, love each other and put differences aside. And, like, it's the stuff that we get taught in elementary school, but it's the stuff that never gets employed in any of the decision making, in any of the structural ways that we put all this together. Like, it's like, this stuff can be very, very simple, but we refuse to make it that way.
Well, that's a bit like saying give up smoking. Everybody knows that it's bad for you, but giving it up is very difficult. You've done something really difficult in life, which is you've given up drinking.
Yeah.
And that's because it's one of these things it's a habit, it's addictive, and it's embedded. And so are all our behaviors. So Cynthia, what have you learned? So for people to take the simple thing is you have to stop drinking, right?
Yep.
But no, the simple thing is in your life, one of the is, people could have told you, but you told yourself, I'm going to stop drinking. But whilst it's simple, it's extremely difficult. So you've experienced doing part of this yourself, because you're saying to our listeners, well, you just have to love everybody. And they're going, what a naive idiot, Cynthia.
Exactly, I know, right?
But no, but you've actually done this. So tell us a little bit about, because giving up something like drink is a really, really difficult thing to do. It's simple, but it's difficult.
And that's so just it.
Tell us a bit about, because if you can describe that process, you actually are describing the process for everybody.
I suppose it's true, isn't it? It's funny because I rarely think about it anymore. It's just something that I just don't. It's not an option for me anymore. But the process that I went through to get there was seeing a lot of people around me being alcoholics and living that life and choosing to live that life or to continue to live that life. And then it was coinciding with a sort of awakening that I was experiencing. I was fortunate enough to have some really beautiful people come into my life and really set me on a path of healing, where they said, you got to take responsibility for your own life, and you got to go through this stuff. You don't go over it, around it, under it. You got to go through the hard stuff. And, it's up to you, kind of thing, how you want this ship to go. So it was sort of, getting this little piece of advice from a very wise woman who said to me, don't try and change anything, just pay attention, and the rest will take care of itself. And so I started paying attention. I started paying attention to who I became when I drank. And I hated who I was when I drank. I don't have very many inhibitions as it is. I certainly don't need to loosen them. It just in terms of like things I would say or things I would do. I'd wake up the next morning and just sit there for however long going, oh God, I can't believe this, the situations I would get myself into, or the things that I would say to people, and, crying, whatever. I just thought, I don't like this. And there was one particularly scary scenario where I drank to the point of blacking out, and I had what was relayed to me that had happened while I blacked out was so terrifying in terms of, I was lucky I didn't end up dead in a ditch somewhere. There was somebody looking out for me that night, and I thought the only way I can ever ensure that this never happens again is to just never drink again. And I made up my mind that was it. And not only that, it was just, I'm very sensitive to energies, and to me, alcohol is a heavy, heavy energy. It's like I was getting this window opened in my mind and my heart to these very light-filled spaces, and this kind of buoyant feeling in my heart that, like, no matter what would happen, I would be okay, because it was like I was lifted by this light energy. And every time then I would fall into a night out drinking, I would feel dragged down by this heaviness that I couldn't shake. And I didn't like being dragged to those places. And I didn't like who I was. And so I said to myself, it just has to be a door that closes and is just never opened again. There's not going to be the, oh, well, okay, in this instance, it's okay. It's like what I do with sugar, or what I do with whatever. It's I go, well, I'm going to have the cookie today. Like, it was the answer from here on out always has to be no. That's just that there's just it's not an option anymore. It's off the table. And I never looked back. That was more than 5 years ago. And really it wasn't that difficult because, as I said, I was fortunate enough to have enough good things happening and people showing me a different way of being, a different way of looking at things. And it was like, if I'm on this path, like kind of like once you start on that path of healing yourself and opening these spaces in your mind, the desire to go back to that energy it just dissipates. It's like I didn't want to be there anymore.
It really does, doesn't it? Because I've done alcohol doesn't have the same grip on me as it did on you, or it does, as there's a proper word to use.
Mm-hmm.
But I had other things, and once you stop, it's so releasing. And I think this is the message, I think, that is important for people listening, that people say it'd be terribly difficult for me to live my life differently, and it isn't actually.
It's not. It isn't. And like, I don't know, it's like you only get one of these as far as I know. Maybe you get many, but I want to experience this one the best way that I can. And I still have certainly a heck of a lot of stuff to wade through, but I'm committed to doing that. And
it's the only one we know of, isn't it?
Exactly. I mean, here we are. I'm not anywhere else right now.
Right.
This is where I am, and this goes back to that feeling of like time passing and like time ticking down on a clock of like every day, Rob, every day that I open my fridge and I see it full of food, I am so thankful. I sit there and I'm like, oh my God, thank you. Look at this beautiful fresh fruit that I'm eating. There will come a time that this is not like fruit and whatever. It will be a distant memory, and it's like, yeah.
So with that as our statement, I don't think we can know when and what will happen. All we know is that life will be impossibly radically different, and all the things that we relied on, like we go down to Sobeys and stock up with food. There's water, we turn the tap and water comes out. In the winter the oil truck arrives. The city might have the odd drunken hooligan, but it's basically I don't have to worry about being murdered every day. If you look at some parts of the world, none of those things are true.
Yeah.
And so how do we prepare for a turbulent period, which we can't get the details right? All we know is that all the things we thought were expected and normal probably won't be, and it will probably happen suddenly.
Yes. And it will be the one little thing that nobody could have anticipated. It's like the bees.
Yes.
Or the sharks or whatever,
Or
it's like,
Ebola
the bees. And it's like, well, if the bees die, which turns out they are dying and en masse, well, we're screwed.
Yeah. Or, California isn't going to be producing any food in about 5 years' time. And you start thinking, well, that's actually quite important, because we got used to eating strawberries and lettuce and broccoli and everything in the winter. And, 80% of the eggs in America are produced in Iowa because the corn is there, and the corn depends on the reservoir. Well, that's going to go too. So suddenly this idea of just, I'm hungry, nip down to the shop.
Yeah.
And this comes back to me about skills that you raised right at the beginning. And I don't know how to fix an engine. Do you?
No.
Do you know how to fish?
No.
Do you know how to grow food? Do you know? I think Kevin probably knows how to make things, but most people, I can't make a thing. We're
Yeah.
absolutely clueless.
We're so, one of the things that I sort of consciously have done in I guess in sort of making an attempt to consciously consume media and whatever is celebrity stuff. Like, I made sure that unless I'm in the grocery store lineup or wherever I am in the shop, I don't know anything about celebrity culture, and I really try and get out of that, because that's like one of those things that really frustrates me the most. I go, what do we care? Like, people are just like blind, like they just don't understand. It's like, why are you paying attention to this?
Yeah.
And that's part of the whole, like, I want to have a real conversation, It's like, I don't give a crap if Justin Bieber did whatever. Like, why would I? Why should we? Nobody should be spending any of those precious moments in their life putting any value on any of this, because shit's going to get real. You're going to be very sorry about time wasted on this.
So, in a way, I'm going to be mean to you now. Not really, but, I'll put you on the spot. In a way, you do know what you've got to do to prepare to give Zadie the best shot, don't you?
Yeah, but I do. I fear that it's uprooting myself again, because, even if I think long term, like long term being even 10, 15 years, I'm not confident that that with the leadership that we have here right now in Prince Edward Island and even Canada, that we've got the right kind of things in place to weather this storm.
But I agree with you. But I would say, I would go further. The official leadership is not there anywhere.
No.
See, I don't think there's... We kind of talked a little bit about this before, so we cheated listeners. In that, if this was 1600 and you were a Protestant living in England and you really didn't like the way things were, you could get on a boat and go to America, and you could create, the kingdom as you saw it. And they did.
I know, but it's like, where do you go now, right? That's exactly it.
So there's nowhere for the refugee to go.
Yeah.
And I think if I could say something just now, I think that there is nowhere to go and there's no place.
Yeah.
But there are some places that have natural characteristics that are better than others. So for me, it's, if I lived in a big city, I wouldn't.
Yeah. No, that's a silly... Well, I'm glad I got out of Toronto, man.
Yeah, I mean, Rome in 350 AD had a population of 1 million people. Rome in 500 had a population of 20,000 people. Because Rome depended on the global food system. And when the global food system went away, well, you can't have the population.
Yeah.
And all our cities depend on a global food system. So my first thing would be, living in a city, not a very good idea. Second thing about living in a city is everybody's anonymous. And I think that's a very bad idea.
Yeah.
There's no support. I now live in a little community in Quebec, about an hour out of Montreal. And like Prince Edward Island, here, you walk down the street and it takes a long time because, you know everybody. And you go to the bank to cash a check, it takes half an hour. It's people stop their cars on the road, and talk to each other. It's that kind of a place. But I do feel here, and this is true in Prince Edward Island as well, that if I need something in my local community, I've only got to ask for it. We're not that close, but it's a sensibility. It's about, I know that we had a neighbour who was ill the other day, and Robin and I just started walking their dog, and we made them meals. It's not that really that we're that nice. It's that one day we may need help, and if you behave like an asshole, you won't get it. And so in Prince Edward Island, you've got that too. I think you've got that sense of People, if you ask people, they will help you, and if they ask you, you will probably say yes. But in a big city, means nothing.
Yeah.
And I think those. So I wouldn't live in a big. I wouldn't live in a big city. The other thing about living in a rural area is you've got access to land.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to grow your own food, you don't need a lot of land, but you need some.
Yeah.
And when I was in Ukraine in the late 90s, so that's 10 years after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the food system had completely collapsed. So all the food stores were closed. There weren't any. There had been food stores, but there weren't any when we were there. And every family had a half-acre plot in the country, and they grew potatoes, and basically potatoes. And that's how they got through it. And so I think, for me, it's going to boil down to, you've got to have some you can't do this on your own. Whatever, if you have really bad things, if you don't have a community, you are doomed. Secondly, you have to have access to somewhere where you can grow food. You are going to have to eat, and you're going to have to know how to grow food, or be very close to people who do.
Yeah.
And do things for them that's useful to them. Because what happened in Cuba, when it all went tits up, is that people would come to the farmers with money and they go, what do I need this for?
Yeah.
I don't need, what am I going to do with your money? Wipe my bum?
Yeah.
It has no your money has no meaning for me.
Yep. Exactly.
So, I don't know, so is PEI, I mean, the leadership is, as bad as everywhere because they're all doing what they're doing everywhere.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and that's the, it's this constant thing with me in this place is that it's like I love it. It's home. It's healing. There are so many things and people that I love here, but there's this like niggling feeling that I can't quite get to it's that like battle with my intuition, where I go, is this my intuition? Is this just, there's something about me that never feels like this should be the place. But when you say that, like, well, where is the place then? Where's the place?
I do think, though, that you're onto something here. You're always onto something. This idea of home, people think home is actually where I was born, and I don't think that's true. When I first came to Prince Edward Island, I practically kissed the ground. I told I'm home. I felt very much at home there, although I wasn't a native. And what I'm saying is home doesn't have to be where your family were. Where I live now actually really is home in so many ways. My roots, hundreds of years of my family are here. And it's also like PEI in terms of community. So and here people go, oh, my neighbour went to school with my mum. Do you know what I mean? It's all the things you have in PEI, which I never had there. It's, you look just like your father. Those those kind of comments that are comforting. What would be home for you, Cynthia?
Home would be a place where I could feel uninhibited. I feel like it's like it goes back to exactly what I said before. Why, when I met you and Hope and James and Robin, however many years ago, where I went, I can be myself and people will, and they'll like me. Well, that's even better. And it's something about like I feel like I wear a mask a lot of the time. Because the things that I want to talk about, people think it's weird. Yeah. People think I'm weird. and like part of the reason why I was able to not drink or, to do, because it's like I don't really care that much, you know. I've lived as the other. I've lived on the outside of things for so long that I still feel buoyant in my own heart, as I say. So it doesn't really matter to me that much. But in terms of like this conversation and as I say, the moving forward and putting roots down with my family and weathering this storm, feeling like home would be feeling like I could be in a place where I don't feel like I have to break through to get to this place, where it's like, it's already happening. We're already on the same page. Like, I don't want to waste time trying to open minds.
I'm right with you. I understand. And PEI, for all its wonderful things, it's a constant struggle because the mainstream is so powerful.
Yeah.
There. You know, someone once told me, how many people does it take to change a light bulb in Prince Edward Island? And the answer is nobody, because nobody changes.
Nobody wants to change anything. But the thing is, you know, and I don't want to offend a lot of my friends who like, they do want to, they desperately want to, but there's the traction's not there, and I can't understand why. And that's where I go, I don't think I have the energy to do it.
But Cynthia, maybe you and I and a few people like us are doomed because, like Cassandra, we can see what's coming and most people don't. Most people don't change until they have to.
Yes.
And maybe, unfortunately, we have to wait for the event. And then I think a lot of people are going to change very quickly. I'll give you one example. My brother-in-law and I, you know, are very perfectly civil to each other, but, you know, I don't think Bob and I would ever admit that we were close, all right? But Bob has, you know, through my sister Cindy, has observed what I've done for my own health and everything. And, you know, so it's in the kind of the bank, all right? But 9 months ago, he was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. So now there's an event, you know, for him. And he's a very smart man. And he knows that type 2 diabetes is not an insignificant diagnosis. And so, but Bob knew one thing about me, that I'd actually done what he had to do. That's all.
Yeah.
The details doesn't matter. Because he's a clever man and he can read all about that himself. But what helped, he's lost 70 pounds and he's completely cured, all by himself. But before then, he wasn't interested. But the diagnosis made him interested. And I have a horrible suspicion, Cynthia, that, you know, the struggle you have with everybody at home and PEI is the one that most of us have everywhere. And most of the other people are just closing their eyes and hoping for the best. And it's only when the shit really hits the fan that all of them go, oh, Cynthia, you were right. And then even worse, you know, why aren't you doing what I'm doing, Cynthia?
Yeah. Well, and that's, you know, to go back to the drinking, I had somebody close to me in my life who years ago I said, you know, you gotta stop drinking. We gotta talk about this. Like, this is gonna kill you. And, you know, nobody wanted to talk about it. It was, Cynthia, you're the only person who wants to talk about this. Yes. Nobody else wants to talk about this. Well, you know, they nearly died from their drinking, and it wasn't until they were literally on their deathbed, or what could have been their deathbed, where they turned to me and said, well, you were right about one thing, you know, that goddamn alcohol, like, almost killed me. And it's like, well, you know, I would never say I told you so, but that's the thing. It's like that feeling of going, well, yeah, I guess that's it. You just gotta wait until it's rock bottom, as they say, right? So I don't know.
So there are things though that you and I can do, and so I'm starting to, having lived my whole life in my head, and still mainly do. I am starting to. So first of all, I've chosen a community that functionally could get through all this, and I'm starting to learn how to do things like grow food. And I'm trying to be. If I live long enough, I'm trying to. If my first 3/4 of my life was in my head, the rest of my life is going to be mainly in my body.
Yeah.
And doing mundane things. And I'm not saying I'm making a lot of progress here. It's really baby steps, but that's where I'm going. And if I had anything to say to my children who don't take what I say terribly seriously because they've listened to Dad their whole bloody life, and the apocalypse hasn't happened yet, I am very much going on about encourage the children to do creative things. Don't worry about school, the worst terrible thing that any child can suffer today, because it stops you thinking.
Yeah.
School stops you thinking.
Yeah. Well, I'm already a weirdo because I don't want to send my kid to school.
Good, good. I mean, I think school is not sending your kid to school, or if you do feel you have to, because school also provides good babysitting service, then really encourage and help your kid find pragmatic, interesting, artistic, creative, doing, making, fixing, whatever things. Don't watch TV. All that. So I'm trying to influence my grandchildren through their parents, not with huge success, but that's the best I can do. And you have more control because Sadie's so little. She has to do what you want her to do. So are you? I mean, she's only 14 months old now, but I mean, what do you think? Tell me more about what your plans are for Zadie.
My plan for her is to facilitate her being her best self, and me guiding her to discover whoever she is, and making sure that I'm just giving her a safe, loving environment for that. That's my goal with Zadie, and to put in as much time as I possibly can, and the strange thing about that, Rob, is how much I get criticized for how much time I spend with her.
Oh, sure.
Like,
yes, you do.
This week, she's 14 months. It wasn't until this week I left her for 2 hours with my mom. I had never, and I mean, I've been away from her for an evening, 2 evenings, with where she's with my partner Kevin, but other than that, I don't leave her. I sleep with her. I put in time with her, and I don't mind doing that because it's like what every stranger tells you, like, enjoy it. It goes so fast. It's like she's not going to be a little person for very long. Like, I need her to feel so secure in who, that I'm here to support her, and that she can be whoever she is on her own time. I'm not trying to give her a schedule to meet any milestones or,
Right.
by the book. It's like, Zadie, cool. Who are you? Show me who you are, and I'll be here to help you, and that's really the best I can do, I think.
Well, you're absolutely on the right path, because this whole the paradox is, and the science is really clear on this, on attachment, is that if you do what you're doing, then Zadie's going to be the kind of person who will be very self-confident and good on her own. It's the
which seems weird, right?
It's the weirdest thing, but that's what it is. So lots of loving and attachment for the first 2 to 3 years of life equals a very independent person.
Yeah. Which is so, and we're in such a rush to they need to learn. It's like, well, it's not a dog. She's my daughter. It's not.
She's learning like crazy. She's learning like crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a wonderful plan. That's a wonderful plan. It is the plan.
Well, I mean, what else? I mean, I could try and turn her into somebody that she's not. But, you know, I lived that, so I don't want her to.
Well, this is what you said. I mean, what I'm hearing, I and people listening to this are hearing all the time is that your personal sadness is about how hard it is to be Cynthia.
Yeah. That's it. That's it. The crux of it.
Yeah, and that's true with all of us. I didn't even know who I was. You know, when I gave up the corporate world 20 years ago this year, I didn't know who I was at all. I was completely lost. Of course, you start getting lost around about 6, you know, when you start going to school.
Yeah.
And I was the most obedient, you know, I was the perfect, you know, boy to have at school or in your organization because I always said, yes, sir.
Yeah. You wanted to be loved, right? Don't we all?
I wanted to be loved. And I thought that the only way I could be loved was to be what they thought I should be.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's it. And that's what I think, you know, Rob, like to kind of, I guess, maybe bring it all together is like we need to stop doing what we think we should be doing and doing what we know we need to be doing, because I can't be the only one who's got this voice in my head, you know, like how many other people are hearing this and ignoring it? You know, we need to start doing what we know we should be doing, not what they're telling whoever they are.
Yes.
You know, whatever they're telling us that we need to care about and pay attention to, and you know, you cut your grass and you do this and you do like whatever, you know, it's like it's that listening to your own heart and following it.
And the worst voice isn't actually them. We have, that's the one that sits on our left-hand shoulder.
Yeah.
Bad Cynthia, bad Robert, you know, you should.
Yeah.
And so I think we'll close now because I think you've hit for this session the perfect thing, which is we have to love ourselves. First step, love ourselves as we would like others to love us.
Yeah.
Because if we don't love ourselves, why the fuck should anybody love us? You know.
Yeah.
They won't.
No. It's so true, Rob. So true. Oh, I just love it. It's like I said to you when I messaged you about this. It's like, and you said it. Talking helps, and it does. You just need to talk about this stuff because I don't want to sit alone in my dread.
So maybe if I haven't pushed the off button yet. So maybe you know, people get very fixed on doing. There's a great bit in Monty Python, The Life of Brian. And, you know, the conspirators are all talking about, you know, it's about action and everything. And then the woman comes in, they've captured Brian, you know, do something. And they start passing resolutions, you know.
Oh, my God.
And I think the first thing is to talk, actually. The real doing here is we can actually, in conversation.
Yeah. Well, it's like I said, you know, don't do anything, just pay attention, and the rest will take care of itself.
I think it will. And if we're ready, well, I think what will happen is, you know, the apocalypse will arrive, and most people will go, what? But the people who've been talking about it will go, okay, I knew this was going to happen.
Yeah.
Get together and come up with a plan that fits what actually does happen, because we can't know what that is until it does.
Yeah.
And I think getting ready for trouble and talking our way, because the other side of our fears is we can retreat, can't we? Mm-hmm. We can retreat into a depression.
Yeah.
And if we share it, we realize I'm not alone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an idiot. I don't have to know exactly what to do, but, well, I'm not alone.
Exactly. Well, that's it. That's it. And then, yeah, where you just go, oh, okay, like I'm not just losing it, sitting here thinking about these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So listeners, on that note, think about your, you know, maybe the first action is to name your fear start talking to some of your friends. Talk to us. Cynthia, do you want to have a last word?
I love you, man. That's, what else can I say, right? You know?
Talk to them. Talk to the people talk to the two people who are listening.
The two people who've actually listened to this whole thing. Just, I guess that all I can say is that just to be buoyant in your own heart, and that's where it starts, right? Is to just get to a place where you know that no matter what happens, you're going to be okay, and go from there.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.